spectral storm. It wasn't the wind that shook the tents, it was the screaming. Faint at first, barely audible over the drumming rain, like someone shouting from inside a dream. But then it came again, closer, clearer. A voice, ragged and wet, tearing through the storm. "Don't go in there. Please don't go in." Then silence. Then thunder. Then more screaming. But no footsteps, no figures. Nothing visible through the thin nylon walls, just voices. The storm had rolled in without warning. No clouds on radar, no wind before it hit. 1 minute, the forest was still and calm. The next, it erupted into chaos. 6 hours earlier, the 5 of them had been setting up camp near Elk Shadow Lake, deep in the backwoods of Montana, miles from cell towers. No paved roads for 20 miles, just dirt trails, pine needles, and silence. Talia, the de facto leader of the group, was kneeling near the fire pit, arranging stones in a perfect circle. She liked symmetry. She liked control. Ray was sharpening sticks for hot dogs, whistling off-key. The jokester, the flirt, already 2 beers in. Elise and Mason were organizing the tents. New couple, still in that touch-each-other constantly phase that made the others roll their eyes. And then there was Cal. Quiet, watchful, recording voice memos into his phone about the trip like he was prepping for a podcast he'd never publish. "First night, 0 signal," he mumbled into the mic. "Sky's clear. Temperature's dropping. Talia's got a fire going. Mason's doing his Boy Scout thing with the tent. Elise thinks she heard something in the woods earlier, but it was probably just a rabbit." He paused and looked up at the horizon. Clouds were forming. Fast. "Correction, sky's not clear." By sunset, the wind had picked up. Not in gusts, but in pulses, like something exhaling through the trees. Branches snapped somewhere in the distance. Ray made a joke about cursed forests and haunted parks, but nobody laughed. They ate quickly. No stories around the fire. Just chewed and swallowed, glancing at the tree line between bites. Cal had that look again. The one where his eyes were too wide, like he was waiting for something to leap out of the dark. "Elise," he said suddenly, "you really didn't see anything earlier?" She hesitated. "It was just, I don't know, a shape. It moved weird, didn't walk, kind of glided." Talia stood. All right, everyone in their tents. No point standing around in the wind. The storm hit like a hammer. At first, it sounded like regular rain, sheets pouring down in waves. But the drops were too heavy, too slow, like something wet slapping the tent from every direction. Ray laughed from his tent. "If this thing flies away, I want someone to tell my mom I died chasing a raccoon with a hot dog skewer." Cal didn't respond. He was holding his phone close to his chest, watching the battery tick down from 23% to 20% in under 5 minutes. Then came the first scream. Not Ray, not Elise, not anyone in their group. A woman's voice, guttural, terrified. "Don't go in there. Please, don't go in." Elise unzipped her tent a fraction and peeked out. Rain hit her face like spit from a boiling pot. Nothing out there, just blackness and pine trunks swaying. Then movement. A figure running through the trees. A woman, her arms flailing, her steps uneven. She stumbled, turned to look over her shoulder, and screamed again. Don't go in there." Then she was gone. Not into the trees. She just vanished. Elise zipped the tent back up with shaking hands. "Guys," she whispered, "you all saw that, right?" Talia's voice came from across the clearing. "Saw what?" "There was a woman running. She disappeared." "No one's out in this," Talia said. "You imagined it." "I didn't." Then a second voice, male, shouting, "You don't get to leave me here. You don't get to leave." Ray said nothing this time. Everyone was listening now. Another figure ran past Cal's tent. This one looked like a teenage boy, shirtless, barefoot, soaked, bleeding from his chest. He was screaming at someone they couldn't see. And then he disappeared the same way. Mid-step, dissolved into mist. No sound of footsteps, no splash, just gone. That's when Talia tried to leave. She unzipped her tent, pulled on her jacket, and stepped into the storm. The rain hit her hard enough to make her stagger. But it wasn't cold, it was hot. Steam rose from the ground where it struck. The air stank of copper and wet wood. She raised her flashlight and swept the clearing. No figures, just her friends' tents and shadows that didn't match the trees. One of the shadows moved. Not fast, not like an animal. It stepped sideways, then twitched and froze, like it didn't know what limbs were supposed to do. Talia backed toward her tent. She barely made it before the next scream split the air. A child's voice this time, high, shrill. "I said I was sorry. Please, stop, stop, stop." Then silence. Just the wet slap of rain on nylon, and the faint static of something whispering. They all huddled in their tents, afraid to speak, afraid to even move. Each of them heard voices, different ones, whispers that pressed into the fabric of the tent like lips, promises, pleas, rage. Talia heard her father's voice. He'd been dead 5 years. "You should have let me go. You should have stayed." Cal heard someone say his name, over and over, each time a little closer. "Calvin. Calvin. Elise is going to die first, Calvin." Ray tried to drown it out by singing, off-key, loud. But even his voice couldn't cover the sudden shrieks that burst from the woods like cracks in glass. Mason curled up, hands over his ears, whispering Elise's name like a mantra. Elise sat motionless in her tent, hand clenched on a flashlight that kept flickering out. When the light failed completely, she didn't cry. She just listened to the breathing from behind the tent, right behind her. Dawn didn't come. The storm didn't stop. The wind rose and fell in long, sighing waves. No birds, no rustling, just voices. And then, the zippers. All at once, all 5 tents. The zippers began to move, slowly, smoothly, from the outside. The sound of them moving, all at once, froze them where they lay. Talia's hand locked around the hilt of the hatchet she kept beside her sleeping bag. It had been a just-in-case item. Now it felt like a lifeline. "Who's doing that?" she whispered. No one answered, because it wasn't any of them. The zippers were too coordinated, not frantic, not fumbled. They slid upward in smooth, measured increments, like hands moving in sync. Cal sat bolt upright, heart pounding. He hadn't touched his zipper, but it was moving from the outside. He scrambled backward in the tent, hitting the back wall as a thin triangle of cold air opened in front of him. Beyond it, darkness, not night, not even a shadow. It was like nothing waited outside the flap, an absence of space, of light. Then, a face leaned in. But it wasn't a face. It had no skin, no eyes. Just glistening strands of muscle pulled tight over a grin far too wide. It hung there, upside down, peering inside like a child looking into a fish tank. Cal screamed. The figure opened its mouth, and a sound came out. Not speech, a perfect recording of Cal's own voice. Guys, did anyone else see that? It was his voice from earlier that night, when he'd spoken just after the first scream. The thing replayed it, mouth unmoving, sound crackling from inside its chest. Then it whispered, "Let me finish what you started." Talia burst from her tent, hatchet raised. The storm hit her like a freight train, wind and heat and freezing rain all at once. She staggered into the open, blinking against the sting, swinging her light around. Something stood near Cal's tent. It turned and slid backward, no walking, no motion, just shifted, like a puppet on strings, vanishing behind the trees. The zipper on Cal's tent was wide open. "Cal!" she screamed. No answer. She ran to the tent and yanked it fully open. It was empty. His sleeping bag was shredded, like it had been dragged through barbed wire. The recorder app on his phone was still running. The screen glowed with the waveform. The playback whispered his own voice again. "Let me finish what you started." She grabbed the phone. A new voice crackled out from the speaker. Not California, her own. "I said I'd keep them safe, but I left them. Talia dropped the phone. Across the clearing, Elise screamed. Mason had unzipped his tent and stepped out into the storm, shirtless, dazed. "Elise?" he called, barely audible over the rain. "Where'd you go?" She hadn't gone anywhere. She was still in her tent, clutching the flashlight that refused to work. The batteries somehow melted. "Mason, get back in the tent." But Mason didn't seem to hear her. He stepped forward into the mist, his arms raised like sleepwalking. Figures moved around him, dozens, all faint, pale, flickering, like reflections on water. Each one repeated the same phrase, like a ritual. "Don't go in there. Stop. Please, not again. Let me out." Mason turned slowly, eyes wide, pupils blown. "Do you see them?" Elise's voice cracked. "Yes. Come back." He reached toward one of them, a boy no older than 15, soaked, barefoot, his mouth moving without sound. When Mason touched the figure, his arm vanished at the elbow. Clean, gone. Not blood, no wound, just absence. Mason stared at the missing limb. He didn't scream. He just looked up and smiled faintly. "They're not ghosts," he said. Then the rest of him winked out, like a candle snuffed. Elise bolted from her tent, barefoot, tripping in the mud. Her breath came in ragged sobs as she ran blindly, away from the clearing, away from the storm that wasn't a storm. She didn't get far. The trees were too close now. Wrong. They had no bark, no branches, just trunks shaped like people, elongated, eyeless, slick. She hit one and stumbled back. Its mouth opened across its chest, wide and toothless, and it exhaled her voice. "You didn't try hard enough." She screamed and ran again. Behind her, the trees whispered names. Mason, Elise, Cal, Elise. The ground felt like it was breathing. Ray hadn't moved. He sat in his tent with a knife gripped tight in one hand and a half-empty bottle in the other. He'd stopped trying to be funny an hour ago. He heard them all. The voices, the screams, the footsteps that didn't belong. He'd heard Mason's voice say something that didn't make sense. He'd heard Elise scream like her soul was being ripped out. He didn't plan on leaving the tent, not for anything. Then something pressed against the wall. Not a hand, a face. The shape of it stretched the nylon, eye sockets, nose, a grin. It rubbed slowly back and forth, like a cat nuzzling its owner. Ray stabbed at it through the tent. The blade tore through fabric, but hit nothing. The shape pulled away, and the tent whispered, "Raymond, Raymond." Time to laugh again. He screamed and slashed wildly, ripping holes in the walls. Rain poured in. The wind screamed louder, and then silence. His light went out. Talia found him 10 minutes later, or what was left of him. The inside of his tent was lined with faces, stretched and fused into the material like things trapped in plastic wrap. Ray's body was curled into a ball in the corner, eyes open, mouth still forming the word no. But there was no blood, there was no opening. Like the storm had folded him into the space between dimensions. Elise stumbled back into camp just before dawn, or what passed for dawn. Talia was the only one still standing. She ran to Elise and hugged her so hard it hurt. "They're gone," Elise sobbed. "They're all gone." "I know," Talia whispered. "We have to stay together." The rain had softened to a mist and the wind died, but the sky remained dark, and the storm never truly left. It waited, and the figures still moved beyond the trees. Some walked in circles, some repeated the same gestures, some mimed their own deaths again and again, slashing throats, hanging themselves, falling into invisible fires. And some just watched the tents, still, waiting. The sky didn't brighten with dawn. It just lightened to a deeper shade of gray. Elise sat near what was left of Ray's tent, wrapped in Talia's spare jacket, trembling. Her lips were blue, not from cold, but from fear, exhaustion, and something deeper. Something leaking into her. Talia hadn't spoken in nearly an hour, not since she realized the storm wasn't around them anymore. It was above them, not just clouds, something, moving, pulsing. It wasn't sky. It was membrane. The wind had stopped completely. No birds, no bugs. Even the trees had gone still, like they were waiting. Talia finally spoke. "We're inside it?" Elise blinked. Inside what? Talia pointed upward. "The storm. It's not weather. It's a structure, a system. Like a dome?" Talia shook her head. "Like a lung." The whispers returned at dusk. Only now they were clear, Not fragmented, not broken. Intentional. They no longer mimicked the dead. They addressed the living. You stayed. You stayed when the others ran. You stayed so you'll see. Talia stood and faced the trees. What do you want? A pause. Then, from behind her, a voice. To continue. She turned. Nothing there. Elise pointed. Look. Dozens of spectral figures had gathered around the clearing. They weren't pacing now. They weren't repeating deaths. They were watching, expectant, and now they were clearer. Human, but wrong. Translucent flesh, hollow sockets. Wet footprints burned into the soil beneath them. Each had a ragged tear somewhere on their body, neck, chest, wrists, as if marked. The nearest one stepped forward. It was Cal, or what used to be him. He moved like he didn't remember how joints worked. His voice buzzed like an old radio. I saw the bottom. There is no bottom. Talia's voice cracked. Where did they take you? Cal blinked, slow and wet. They didn't take me. They opened me. Then he leaned in, face inches from hers. They're looking for someone new. Elise grabbed Talia's hand. We need to go, now. But the storm pulsed above them again, light flickering across the membrane like veins under a flashlight. A low moan rolled through the air. Not thunder, breath. The spectral figures began to close in. Cal's skin began to flake. Not rot, peel. Like paper burning slowly inward from the edges. I remember you, he said, reaching toward Elise. You watched and did nothing. Elise stumbled back. I didn't, I couldn't. They remember too, he whispered. Talia yanked her back. We run on 3, toward the trees. Ready? Elise nodded through tears. 3. The storm above them contracted. The trees shook. 2. The figures opened their mouths in unison. A wind rushed inward. 1. They ran. The forest was a blur of flickering shapes, groaning branches, and phantom light. Elise ran ahead, ducking low, using instinct and panic to guide her. Talia was just behind, lungs burning. But something moved faster. The storm was collapsing inward, not falling, curling, like muscle tissue shrinking after heat. The spectral figures multiplied. Some burst from the trees like rain through broken glass. Others rose from the soil, soaked and twitching. Talia screamed, shoved one aside, and it burst like vapor, leaving behind the smell of rot and the echo of her own scream. Elise shouted ahead, There, look! A clearing, not their camp, something new. A pond, stagnant, perfectly still. A black mirror in a circle of flattened grass. Talia skidded to a stop beside her. The water reflected nothing, not the trees, not the sky, not them. Elise stared at it. What is it? I don't know, Talia gasped. But it's not part of this place. Is it an exit? I think it's a choice. The storm closed in behind them. The figures lined the tree line, all silent now, waiting. Then one of them stepped forward. It wasn't Cal. It was Mason. He looked younger, healthier. almost alive. His mouth opened and Elise's voice came out. "I'm sorry." She recoiled. No, you're not him." It repeated louder. "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." Talia whispered, "It's you. They're showing you." "I didn't leave him. I tried." "You watched?" Talia said softly, "Like I watched Cal." Then she turned toward the water. The spectral figures took a synchronized step closer. Talia dropped the hatchet. "This is it." "Don't," Elise begged. But Talia smiled faintly. "One of us has to choose." "Choose what?" Talia stepped into the water. No splash, no ripples. The surface simply accepted her. She turned back once, face glowing faintly. They need one voice to carry it forward. "It's me. You go." And she sank. Gone. The storm stopped moving. The figures began to fade. And for the first time, Elise could hear nothing. No wind, no breathing, just stillness. Then the sky split, not with lightning, but light. White, blinding. The membrane above peeled away, revealing stars, a vast spiraling network of storms in the sky, each with its own whispering core. She was standing at the center of something ancient. Not malevolent, just hungry. A machine made of memory. One that needed someone to record it, to be its next witness. 2 days later, a rescue team found Elise walking barefoot along the dirt road outside the trailhead. Blank-eyed, soaked, but uninjured. She didn't say where she'd been, didn't speak for days. Eventually, she whispered 2 things to the nurse, checking her vitals. There was a storm. Then, quietly, "It's still coming." Thank you for listening to this story. Your support means a lot and helps keep these tales coming. If you enjoyed it, please take a moment to subscribe and follow for more dark and immersive stories just like this one. New horrors await. Don't miss what's coming next.